ladies and gentlemen, I am back. I am the Bear of Texas, and it's once again my honor for the Bear of Texas podcast to be paired up with the Playmakerz Blog. Today I have a very special guest. He is Kris Rex. He's an independent pro wrestler, and he is the current Infinite Pro Wrestling Fury television champion. Kris, it is such an honor to be talking to you today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on your show. When you originally hit me up about doing Dark Side of the Ring, I was really interested because, I've been on a few podcasts, but it seems to always kind of be the same thing. Like, ask me the same question. It's kind of like I'm on repeat, like I'm a broken record. It's like the same thing. So this is something different that I wanted to hop on and I can actually talk about, like give an opinion on,
See, and that's what I want because I'm a sports writer, and opinion is always what I'm looking for, and I'm always looking for the scoop. So let's go.
I've always said pro wrestling. I'm sorry to cut you off there, but like pro wrestling is 100% based off of opinion. There's really very little in wrestling you could say, oh, it's a fact that this person's the best. It's a fact that So with Dark Side of the Ring, they kind of go through the facts. You
see, exactly, and as a sports writer, my personal vow, or what I'm dedicated to, is to get the facts straight, because it's what the readers want. They want facts. They want the truth, and I'm committed to telling the truth. And to say that I'm committed to telling the truth, it's one hell of an understatement. And that's what I love so much about the Dark Side of the Ring, because you can tell they did their research, they interviewed the right people, they got the facts straight, and that's why I love this series so much. As a wrestling fan, it's about time we had a series like this.
Yeah, I agree, and Vice is doing really good with it. They the first season, I watched every episode of the first season, and it was just like some of the stories I didn't even know. Like, I've heard of the Bruiser Brody, I've heard of the Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage beef, and what happened with Elizabeth and Randy Savage. The Fabulous Moolah thing that came out around, what was it, two or 3 years ago at WrestleMania. They covered that, but I didn't know that much about the Von Erichs. Like, I know, it's a sad kind of pattern that happened with them. But, I didn't know about Gorgeous Gino and everything surrounding that, so I was able to, sorry, I was about to curse there. I was able to, dive a little bit deeper into these stories.
See, that's why I love it, because you learn so much. That's the main key. You get to learn so many things you didn't know. The Von Erichs was really important, because, believe it or not, I actually live in the town where the Von Erichs grew up. I actually live in Denton, Texas.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. So, all right, we got Brooklyn, New York, and Texas over here. All right.
Yeah, and the Texas-New York connection, and, it's once again so great to hear a unique New York accent. All right. So,
and at the heart of it, we're all fans. Whether you're a wrestler or whether you are, we're all fans of this,
Oh, yeah. All right, so let's get right to it. So, the Chris Benoit one, honestly, this was actually the very first episode I watched. I don't know, I wasn't paying attention, and that's something I regret, but I'm glad I can catch up. The Chris Benoit story is something that's been really interesting, since it happened. See, I got criticized so much because I tell people, look, Chris Benoit did what he did, but we have to understand there's a lot of things you don't know. And this documentary really just, it took you to school.
Well, I'll tell you how I felt about it. I always said, I kind of argue with fans, which sometimes I shouldn't do, because again, we all have our opinion, we're all entitled to our opinion. But I just feel like what he did, you could be a great wrestler. I've met great wrestlers and good wrestlers that aren't the best human beings, so when everyone's pushing for Benoit to be in the Hall of Fame, it's like, why? You're just going to bring up, what about his kid that is alive, and what about his wife's family? You got to counter in that. Sometimes us wrestling fans, and we get so one-tracked on wrestling that we don't think about everything else that's going to surround it, who that's going to affect, and what that's going to look like on the company. So before watching this, I was just like, I don't agree with it, man. He was a great wrestler, but his career is tarnished,
See, it's sad because I was always a huge fan of Chris Benoit. I liked his in-ring ability. You could tell how aggressive he was. And people, see, I've had all these friends who don't like wrestling. I would introduce them to it, and they would watch Benoit, and they would tell me, man, this guy's really aggressive. I tell them, well, obviously he should be. He was trained by Stu Hart in the famous Hart Dungeon. And when you're trained in that dungeon, you better damn well take wrestling seriously, because that's when wrestling officially becomes your life.
Yeah. His whole story of how he came up and what's scary is how much like Dynamite Kid he was. That's what was scary to me. Is he was so like just like Dynamite. He looked just like him. He did the flying headbutt, which I'm sure we're gonna cover later on. But it was just so scary how he just emulated him to a T.
It is, and the whole story about the murder. I mean, the day that he was murdered, that's when I immediately started doing research. I mean, I wasn't fully in a writing yet, but I already developed a unique skill for research, so I started researching, and then first thing I did was the injury history. I'm like, I wouldn't be surprised if everything he's gone through in his career had a factor in it, because especially how David, his son David Benoit, I think that's David, I believe his name, said the Chris Benoit that did what he did is not the Benoit that he knows. And David himself explains, like, that's not the father, that's not the Benoit we knew. Like, he says the whole thing, he says something happened to him. And as we saw in the whole episode, I mean, you know that it's true.
Yeah, something definitely went wrong with his brain, a chemical imbalance in his brain. And I have to say, honestly, like, my opinion is after Eddie died. Like, I think that, and that's what I got from that, from both of the parts, is after Eddie died, like, he just went down this downward spiral.
I mean, that's what happened. I mean, you lose your best friend. I mean, best friend's not even enough to describe the two. I mean, those guys, you know, they were in Japan together. I mean, they started wrestling together. I mean, the whole career they were all together. And then when that goes down like that, you guys become closer than brothers. I mean, bigger than family. It's like they're literally inseparable.
Yeah, they're on the road. What, 350, 360 days a year? You know.
Yeah.
That becomes your family. That becomes what we call a road wife or a road husband. You know, you're with each other. You're like married to each other, and you have to have each other's back. And when that's gone, you know, and the circumstance that it's under too, like it was a cardiac arrest, right?
Freddie Guerrero, yeah, it was. I believe he died of. They say it's a heart attack. I mean, no one really. Yeah, complications of something because of his past drug addictions. Although he had been clean I think he had been clean for a long time. But unfortunately, I mean, those things come back to bite you. But you know, honestly, I mean, the whole wrestling world. I mean, when Eddie Guerrero passed away, I mean, I'll admit I got emotional too because Eddie Guerrero was a wrestler that I loved.
Yeah, man. Even that was way before, you know, I got in the business, and like I cried because I loved Eddie Guerrero, and when you know his story, and I watched him from when he was in WCW all the way up to when he won the title, so it's kind of like you're a part of his life. You know, you watched him grow as an adult, you know, and for him to pass away, that's crazy. And I remember one specific match that actually my trainer had with him. Trained by the SAT Joel and Jose Maximo. So they were in Ring of Honor, and around the time Eddie Guerrero he had gotten suspended from WWE for, I believe, violating the drug policy, and he was still Intercontinental Champion. He did a couple shows for Ring of Honor, and one of the shows it was him and Amazing Red versus Joel and Jose Maximo. And through that match, like, they kind of became best friends. So when I started training under Joel, like, he would tell me these stories of how close he really was to Eddie, and I'm like, wow, like, I would have never thought. So it's kind of like, it affected a lot of people in the industry.
I know, and obviously the person, you know, affected the most is obviously Chris Benoit.
Yeah, exactly. So I something there, and then with the whole CTE, when Chavo Guerrero was talking about CTE, that's really what kind of started making me think, you know, because I've had maybe 4 or 5 concussions.
Man.
You know, so yeah, it's like, it makes you think like, whoa, I got to take it easy. You know, I got to really protect myself, because once that brain damage starts, it's like you're no longer in control.
See, and I'm glad you mentioned concussions, because Benoit had numerous concussions in his career, because not only was he known for his aggressive style, but he was known for taking high risks. I mean, the flying headbutt, or sometimes if he was on the top rope about to do the wrestler would jump up, he would like literally start headbutting you until you fell down. I mean, Benoit took wrestling. I mean, he took wrestling way too seriously, but he had to because he loved it so much. I mean, he felt like once you know, like I said, when you train under the great Stu Hart, I mean, if you take wrestling as a joke, I mean, you're a disgrace. So Benoit took things seriously. I mean, Benoit was just so committed. I mean, it was about providing for his family, you know, giving to the fans, and just building a legacy. But Benoit did suffer numerous concussions, because based on my research, I think the guy who looked at his brain, I mean, he said that he had a brain like his brain was the kind like for an 80-year-old who had Alzheimer's, so his brain was practically destroyed. So he was not his true self. I mean, I think Benoit really died when Eddie Guerrero died.
Yep, and that's what I got from that. And there's a part with Chris Jericho was telling a story about how they had a match back in the day. I don't know if you remember this, but something went wrong where Jericho went for a kick and it kind of didn't connect. And when he went to the locker room, Benoit was sitting there doing squats. And, Jericho's like, what, did you get punished or something? He's like, no, I have to do squats. He's like, why? He goes, because I messed up. And he's sitting there doing 500 Hindu squats.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, I do.
That was his determination. And unfortunately, that determination became his downfall.
I mean, Benoit, going back to how he took wrestling seriously, even if he messed up once, he would punish himself. And not only that, he was like that to other wrestlers. There's that story of how one time he kicked the Miz out of the locker room because I think Miz dropped something on his bag or I don't know what Miz did on it. Honestly, from what I read, is he dropped crumbs on Benoit's bag and Benoit kicked him out. But Benoit was just one of those guys. If you fuck up, you pay the damn. You have to learn your lesson the hard way. That's how it is.
But who knows how long the CTE, the trauma started, how long ago when did that brain damage start? It's, who knows how long he was like this and having, these bursts of anger,
Exactly. He had been wrestling for so many years. Started out in Japan. Maybe it might have started when he had his first concussion, and I've had a mild concussion. When I was amateur wrestling, I did suffer a mild concussion. And I know that, if you don't heal properly, if you don't take care of it, your brain's it's already gone bad. I don't know too much about concussions, but I do know if you don't take it seriously and you don't heal properly, you're just causing further and further damage. And some people believe that's what happened to Benoit because it was reported that he had wrestled through concussions and had not healed properly. And that's what messed things up even more.
Yeah. It's when you've been wrestling for 15 years, almost 20 years, and it's how many hits to the head can you take? Because that's really what it comes down to, is getting hit in the head. You go take a bump and you accidentally, your head rock. All those shots to the head, at some point you have to say I'm gonna lose my head at some point, and that I don't mean that in a joking way. He lost his head.
That's something I would ask Mick Foley. As far as how many shots to the head, that's something Mick Foley. I would ask Mick Foley as well. But you see, folks. The wrestling business is not a joke. Those guys. Those guys are properly trained. It's choreographed, but no. Those guys are getting hit. I've met wrestlers before, and they had bruises, and it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, it's scripted, but no, those guys get hurt. You could die in the ring, for goodness sake.
You can, and wrestlers have died in the ring.
Yeah, numerous times.
Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? It's a long process. It's a hard, thought-out process. Yeah, I know. I was there. From March of this year, thinking about how I'm going to do this, doing all my research, trying to get everything right. What platforms can we use and how we going to record it and how we going to make it sound good and make it all this happen. And then I came upon Anchor. The Anchor app on my phone, the easiest choice I could ever make to do a podcast. It's free to use. You don't got to pay for nothing. You can record episodes whenever you're ready. You can edit it and then you can release them when you want to. And you don't have to worry about trying to figure out how you're going to distribute it on other platforms, because Anchor has partnerships with Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Breaker, Castbox, Pocket Cast, whatever you name it. Because the Playmakerz Blog Podcast is the podcast that I use. We're on all them platforms. We're on 9 platforms just by using the Anchor app. So pretty much all the questions that you have questions about doing a podcast, go to the Anchor app or go to the Anchor website, anchor.fm.com, and just search through it, ask questions. Because I tell you, a free app that does all this, there's nothing more you can ask for. I even got friends, they doing their podcast on the Anchor app. Faith Talk, you might have heard of it because it's very good. And it's great that it's an app like this, it's a website like this that makes it easier for people to do podcasts and do what they love best, talking about the things that they love to talk about. So give Anchor a try, see how much you like it. We'll love to hear your podcast.
with wrestling, and people say it's fake. Okay, you can have that opinion. Yes, I get where you're coming from. It's choreographed, but at the same time, and from my own personal experience, like once you hear that crowd, at that point, you and your opponent look at each other and you're like, you know what? Let's go. I'm sorry for cursing. Let's go all out. Because it's that roar of the crowd. You got the lights on you, the cameras on you, the crowd's there, and you're just like, oh, this is what I'm feeling. You're in that moment. And Chris Benoit was on a larger scale than me. He was on a way larger scale than I am. So think about hearing that roar of a crowd 340 days a year, and you're just like, dude, that adrenaline from wrestling and being out there, it makes you want to go harder.
Exactly, because you worked your whole life to get cheered, and you want to have the fans keep cheering you, and sometimes you're just like, you know what, I've come this far, I can't spoil it, I gotta take risks, it's part of the business, so fuck it, basically. Yeah,
pretty much.
See, and Chris Jericho and Chavo Guerrero really, they really touched my heart, because it didn't surprise me, but it really made me sad. I bawled when David Benoit said that WWE did nothing to help him.
Oh, man.
It enraged me, but at the end of the day, I'm really not surprised. Are you?
I would have at least looked out for the kid. It's not the kid's fault, man.
It's not
his fault. And he was an innocent bystander. They didn't do anything for Nancy's family either. But I shed a few tears when Chris Jericho and Chavo Guerrero came out, like when David Benoit started breaking down. They came out and it's like, wow, like they were there right in that moment as they were filming, there for him, supporting him, and they were the only ones there for him.
And it's, Chris Jericho and Chavo were so close to Eddie. Chavo too had been with Chris. Chris and Chavo, if I got that right. It doesn't surprise me they were there for the kid. They were so close to his dad. They felt like it's now we have to take care of him, just like his dad took care of us. It's just it's the role of family.
How many?
I'm sorry,
but that goes to show you how many other wrestlers were close to Chris Benoit and couldn't separate that from his kid. You have to separate. Chris Jericho and Chavo Guerrero were able to see. It's not this kid's fault. Someone has to be there for him. Someone he knows. Someone that knows his family needs to be there for him, and everyone else kind of shunned him away. And that's what I'm getting at, is there were other wrestlers that were close with Benoit. There were a lot of other wrestlers that were close with Benoit in WWE, but they all couldn't, they all kind of pushed themselves away. And I feel like as putting yourselves in the kid's shoes, that's hard to grow up.
I know.
That's hard to grow up with.
See, and he wants to live his dream. He wants to be a wrestler too. I think he's already a wrestler. And there was a story that he wants to perform under the name, I think, Chris Benoit Jr. or something like that. He wants to kind of like pick up where his dad left off, and and it's been hard for him.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard because the whole Benoit tragedy it left a bad taste in people's mouths for wrestling after that.
Exactly.
It really did, and wrestling was under a lot of scrutiny, and the first thing they started talking about when it came out was steroids. So instantly, that's the media's first go-to when it comes to anything that goes wrong, where it's steroids, roid rage. And it's like, it blames pro wrestling. It doesn't blame the person, the human that performed those actions. The blame was put on wrestling.
So I'm not surprised, because I think Vince McMahon had been accused many times of actually forcing wrestlers to take steroids, so that's why it doesn't surprise me that
I can't
wrestling.
I can't, say anything on that. I've never worked for WWE. I've never met Vince McMahon, so I can't really say whether any of that's true.
See, exactly, because I don't know if it's true, because like you said, the media is always going to immediately go to steroids, and that's what's happened. So, the whole murder is a mystery. No one knows really what happened. I just know that, I just say Benoit died when his best friend died. That's when the real Benoit that we knew was gone. And that's what David's trying to say. And when David actually finally had it in him to, to tell WWE, they did nothing for me, so fuck him. He doesn't want anything to do with them. I mean, I don't blame him at all.
Not at all. If I was him, I would feel the same way.
And honestly, I really don't feel like...
He was there. He was at the shows. He was with Chris Benoit. That's his son. He took him to shows. So they were around him. So there's really no reason for them to, like just because his father did this, you're going to punish the kid?
That doesn't make any sense. At all. And it's sad. I mean, a lot of wrestling promotions, I don't think his career is going to be blackballed. I mean, from what it sounds like, I don't think he has any interest in going to WWE. I mean, especially how they treat him. I wouldn't want to either. It was rumored that All Elite Wrestling is interested in bringing him in. I don't know.
I know he's been at a few shows.
Yeah, he's been at a few shows, and I know he's close to. I believe he's close to Natalia as well. I think he's kind of close to I'm not sure how close he is to the Hart family, but I know he's close to her because he's posted pictures with her. But as far as David's career goes, I want him to pursue his dreams. If he does become a wrestler, I'll probably start writing stories about him. I would love that because I would say
if he becomes a wrestler again, you have to separate his father from.
Yeah.
I personally don't think maybe he shouldn't use that is his family name, but maybe go a different route, but again, everyone would have to separate him from his father, and it's hard to do that as a second, third, fourth generation wrestler, it's hard because everyone's gonna have that thing about he's got to wrestle like Chris Benoit, he's got to look like Chris Benoit, his gear's got to look like Chris, he's got to be, and that's so hard to break away from. So kudos to him for still wanting to do this, bro. For real, after seeing all this scrutiny and everything that he's been through, to still want to do that, then you got a love for this. So kudos to him for doing that, and if he's able to break away from that and just pretty much say, fuck everyone's opinions, I'm going to be my own man, he's going to go far. That's what Brian Pillman did. Brian Pillman Jr. When I first heard of him when he was training, I was booking for a company in Ohio, and instantly I said, I want this dude. And not because he's Brian Pillman's son, because I wanted to turn him into something different that will completely shed him away from his father. Which, unfortunately, the promotion wound up being in the wrong hands, as far as who was the actual promoter, but he was able to break away from that and kind of create his own legacy, and that's what you have to do as a generational wrestler.
The wrestling business is an art in itself. It's obviously not for everyone, but yes, I agree with you. When a son of a wrestler, whatever happens, we do have to distance them as much as possible because we have to keep the negativity away. But at the end of the day, I want those wrestlers, to pursue their dreams as well.
You want them to be successful.
Exactly. Coming up with a character for a wrestler can be difficult because there's a lot of ideas out there. A lot of ideas seem silly, but if David wants to have a rabid Wolverine character like his dad, if it works out, then fine. But he knows if he wants to do that better, how difficult it's gonna be because from all the negative stuff coming from his dad. But I still think that David's gonna be okay. I think he's gonna make it. I think he's gonna have a career, and he's gonna achieve his dreams, just like Brian Pillman Jr.
Yeah, and all power to him, man.
The whole documentary is just. It's literally a lesson. You're literally in school.
You know they dove deep into this. It was a 2-part episode, man.
There was so much of the story. You see, that's what's so unique. Like I said, they did their research. They got the scoops. That's why they were able to create a hell of a story out of it. And we learned so many things about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. And, with it being, the only thing I would say is I wish Eddie would have had his own. Instead of making it, part 1 and part 2, maybe the first will air the Eddie Guerrero story. And then the second episode maybe should have been the Chris Benoit story because they interlink.
Exactly. Yeah, that would have made more sense actually.
Because Eddie Guerrero, he should have had his own episode. That's just the only, I would say, negative thing I would have to say about the the documentary itself, or the 2 episodes itself was that Eddie Guerrero should have had his own episode. Because they did cover Eddie Guerrero in the first episode, but, you know, it's the Chris Benoit story, you know, so maybe it's just me. Maybe just throwing his name on there, I think, would have just been nice enough, you know? Maybe I'm being picky.
Well, to be honest, they really had to mention Eddie Guerrero for most of the story because, you know, the main thing is the death of Eddie Guerrero is what affected Benoit, so Eddie Guerrero's death played a huge role in the downfall of what happened to Benoit, so that's why, you know, they had to pitch in Eddie. But you're right, Eddie should have had his own episode. Because, you know, Eddie had a great career too. And he had struggles too. I mean, mental problems, you know. And what made me cry about Eddie is, like, you know, his marriage fell apart, but then he got clean, and then, you know, he got his family back, he worked hard, and it's just, I mean, see, the life of a professional wrestler it's not easy at all. I mean, you're on the road all the time. You're in pain. I mean, you're not only in pain physically, but, you know, mentally, emotionally. I mean, always traveling. It's, you know, being away from your family, you know, being stressed. I mean, you know, you're probably all stressed out. You're probably worried, you know, you're going to mess up. You're going to worry that you're going to get buried. You're not going to get what you were promised. You're going to get fired for one mistake. It's...
The life, like, the whole life in pro wrestling, it's kind of like, best way I can say it is, it's love and hate. It's a gift and a curse. It's, you know what you're doing, but you don't know what you're doing. It's like it's everything you want, but everything you don't want. It's, you can make money, but you can't make money. It's just always like complete opposites, yin and yang, man. And it's kind of something you have to be like, okay, this is the life I'm choosing. You know, no, life shouldn't have to be this way, you know. In a perfect world, we'd all be making $300,000 a year doing what we love, you know, whether it's wrestling or whether it's fucking riding your bicycle, you know. But, you know, you have to work, and you have to work on these little companies. You have to work on the little shows in the dive bars. You have to work on the shows. You have to do that to build that name value. And then once you get that name value, then you can start making money. And sometimes even just trying to get that name value, it takes years. Like, I've been doing this for 8-9 years now, and like I can honestly tell you, like, I don't have an ego or anything. You probably, if you didn't listen to the radio show or you didn't know me or Ricky, like, you wouldn't know who I was, who Kris Rex was, you know. And like, that's just the truth. That's just realistically, like, a majority of the guys that are talented and you don't know about them, and they're just trying to scratch and claw their way up that ladder to hopefully get seen by somebody that can put them on a national platform. Not necessarily going to WWE or AEW, somewhere where, okay, this is a bigger platform, and then what's the next platform to get on? And it's a work. Like, sometimes it takes guys 15 years to get to WWE sometimes.
I mean, it's not easy.
You tell me a job where it takes 15 years to get a promotion.
I mean, I'm a sports writer myself, and the world of journalism is extremely brutal. I mean, I graduated from the University of North Texas about 4 years ago with a degree in journalism, and since then I've been building and improving as a sports writer. I started a podcast, just to improve further. But the bottom line is, folks, the wrestling business. I mean, any job out there. I mean, there's no such thing as an easy job. You have to pay your dues, especially in wrestling. And go back to this documentary. I mean, Benoit and Eddie Guerrero paid their dues big time. Now, as we wrap up this part about the Benoit, I want to ask you. Do you believe in your heart that the death of both Eddie and Chris Benoit affected the world of professional overall in a very negative way?
That's a good question. I would say it did, on both counts, and I'll explain why. Because of Eddie Guerrero, because he was such an influence on so many people, that his death just it was like we hit pause, like, whoa. Like, he was the guy, he was the Daniel Bryan before Daniel Bryan, He did, he no one thought Eddie Guerrero, if you told Eddie Guerrero, I mean, if you in 1996 that Eddie Guerrero was going to be WWE champion, the top guy in the company, a majority of people wouldn't believe you. So he was that inspiration. He was that influence, that motivation for a lot of the guys that are in there now and that were on the indies, just starting on the indies or working your way up the indies when Eddie Guerrero died. So that left a negative thing because now it's like, where do we go from here? And with Benoit, of course, we had the whole scrutiny on professional wrestling, but at the same time, it was also, we lost Benoit. Where do we go from here? He was another guy that, like Eddie Guerrero, was told he wasn't big enough, he wasn't good enough, he couldn't talk, he couldn't cut promos, he wouldn't be a world champion, as Kevin Nash would say, vanilla midget, and he did it, And it's funny how Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit did it at the same time.
Exactly.
So it's just like losing two great talents. One to, I would say maybe natural causes. To me, it's not like he was on drugs, which I've heard those rumors he wasn't on drugs, So it's just an effect of maybe past drug usage, which crept up on him. That's something he couldn't control. And then you have one that's due to a tragedy, man. It definitely was hard to recover from both of those.
See, and the final thing I want to say on this part is the professional wrestling, folks, like I said, it's not just, physical pain, it's mental and emotional pain, and that's what happened to Chris Benoit. Well, folks, that wraps it up for today. Chris, it was such an honor to speak with you. I look forward to having you as a guest again, and good luck to you. And, like I said, I'm just so excited. I can't wait to speak to you again. So I'll talk to you later.
Thank you, Alex. And for those, if you want to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, it's at Rex Wrestles, REXWRESTLES. And you can catch me on Pipe Bomb Radio with Motley Mondays every Monday at 5:30 p.m. We're bringing the best of glam rock. I'm going to be setting up some interviews. Maybe I'll discuss some WrestleMania. But again, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Playmakerz Blog, and I can't wait to come back.
And that's why, folks, I'm so excited to talk to him again. Y'all have a good day. Y'all be safe.